Hey. So yesterday we were talking about Am I on there? See, the camera forces you to be vain. You know, it really does. It's an ugly taskmaster, especially for the ugly. Oh, geez. Find yourself saying, "Wait, I need to see more of me." All right, we were talking about metaphysics yesterday in our online class, and I think we got through most all of that. Let me just, make up a illustration here as we put together this idea of freedom, determinism, God, the nature of God, and evil in the world, and all that. Let's say that, let's assume that Minimester goes on like it has in the past, somehow. I don't know what's going to happen then, but, and Andrea, I'm going to pick on you if you don't mind. Okay. So you, and the rest of us at this point think you're going to graduate, in May. But you got a internship at the Harley dealership, maybe, here in Tulsa, one of them. And you fall in love with a nice, I won't say nice looking, but a nice mechanic named Spike. And you love Spike. You just like love at first sight. He's the same way with you. He's a little bit older than you, but not crazy older. And you decide, I'm not going back to school. In the spring, I'm gonna marry Spike. So you marry Spike against everyone's objections and everyone trying to warn you about maybe wait a little bit. What's the hurry? But you're going to marry Spike, and you do, and you move into his mobile home with him, with his pit bulls and all that. And so and you kind of give his place some bit of a female touch. Maybe put some flower boxes on the windows or something, a wreath on the door, whatever it is that. Yeah, there's something women do to a home that makes it different than ours. Anyway, so one day you took his motorcycle to Reese's, all right? And while you're there, they huddle you into some storm shelter because a tornado comes through town. And, well, it might surprise you, but the tornado went right through your mobile home park, and it destroyed you and Spike and the two dogs' home. And once they let you out of the shelter, you rush home on the cycle and find, there's your husband's dead, and I'm sorry, your dogs are dead too. Man, your husband's dead, but I have something else to tell you. Brace yourself. Your dogs are dead. Isn't it weird how we get more emotional in movies? Like when a human dies, it's like nothing. You kill a dog or something, everyone's just like, oh my God, start crying, and that's really what happened. And so there you are, and you're just collapsed on the ground, crying, and you did really love him. And in fact, all of us kind of came around to your relationship with him. We're like, well, you know what? I think she made the right decision for herself. But then this happens, and what are you going to do? And so some very, very well-intentioned pastor from the Church of What's Happening Now or whatever comes by and puts his hand on your shoulder and says, ma'am, I don't know you. I don't know what just happened, what your loss is, but whatever it is, God has a plan for this. God has a plan for you. And I know that. And you get a little bit of energy and you say, is that right? Well, I got to tell you, before I dropped out of high school, I took philosophy, and we learned that God is all-powerful, all-knowing, and all-good. And he says, amen, sister, that he is. Yeah, that's right. And you say, well, hey, if that's true, then God must have known the tornado was coming. He doesn't want me to suffer like this, and his goodness would have compelled him to use his power, and his knowledge, of course, to stop this from happening. But maybe God is only two of these things. Maybe he's not all good, all powerful, all knowing. Maybe he's only all good. But he's all good and all knowing. So he knew the tornado was coming. He'd like to stop it if he could, but he didn't have the power to do so. Right? or he's all powerful, all knowing, but maybe not all good all the time. Yeah. So he knows it's coming. He has the power to stop it, but I'm just not in a really good mood today. Hope I'm not getting too blasphemous. I'm not trying to be, but I'm saying that it's hard to reconcile these three things in our minds. It's hard to reconcile because we are limited with this. And then the other way around would be, what have I left out? That he's all powerful, and he would stop it, but it was just as big a surprise to him as it was to you. Just caught him off guard. Whoa, where'd that tornado come from? Yeah. So the pastor, of course, leaves, in a complete faith quandary. Doesn't know, it's like, whoa. Wish I wouldn't have spoken to her. But the point, I don't know that tornadoes are necessarily evil, right? I mean, there's nothing inherently evil, about there being warm wind and cold wind that mix together and start to swirl and then create this. That seems to me to be kind of what would that be? Meteorology and physics? Would that be that? Am I in the right? Heat, cold air. Is that right? Okay. Do you know that there's a weather pattern that happens in the panhandle of Oklahoma? And it's called like a panhandle hook or something like this. And when that happens, eventually it swirls around and goes northward at an angle that it causes problems with shipping and boats on the Great Lakes. Isn't that crazy? Right here in Oklahoma. If you ever wondered what's going on at the panhandle, if you ever sit around and wonder, that's one thing going on out there. And there's really not a whole lot else, because I've been out there a few times. It's wind and windy. Let me also say this, though. We don't hide this fact in Oklahoma, right? I've noticed that in our state song, in the first two sentences, we mention how windy it is here 3 times. 3 times. We're up front with it. We're like, it's windy here. Yeah, think about it. Okay, first 2 sentences, 3 times, we're telling you it's windy here. So that's no surprise. But anyway, so this is what happened. This involves wind, right? And yeah, but maybe there are things that are, kind of seem more evil for sure. And however, when we try to reconcile the idea of God as we would like for him to be, all those 3 qualities, and again, this is what Augustine dealt with, maybe it's possible that we just don't have the capacity to understand the nature of God. And that kind of makes sense, right? That we would not be able to understand how God thinks, or how God sees things, or how he experiences things, or I'm not sure how to word it. That's how short we might fall in explaining how God experiences the world, or how he experiences time, or how he experiences what his thinking is. Now, again, I mentioned yesterday this about deism. Has anyone heard of that before? Deism? That must come up, I'm sure, in American government or something, or I don't know where. History, maybe. If you think about it, that's an intellectual's response. I mean, these are good people. These are, like I said, a lot of them are founding fathers. A lot of them are scientists. A lot of them were statesmen. A lot of them, had a lot of interest in some kind of fair type of government. And so in France and the United States, we're almost simultaneously, fighting these revolutions there. But this idea of trying to kind of come to grips with God leads them to the conclusion that God is, he's present, he's the creator, he cares about us, but he's given us all the tools that we need. And he's going to he's going to watch and see how we handle that, what we do with those things that we're given. I had some time ago, and this may surprise you to hear this, but some time ago I was a member of a health club, yeah, or like a workout place. I know. A lot of you are smiling behind your mouth, like, what? Smirking. But I was in the locker room and I was just putting on my shoes. Maybe I was taking them off, but I think I was putting them on. And this guy came by and said, "Hey, where did you get those shoes from?" Now, I don't think they were anything special. They were like, they were like Nike or something. "Where'd you get those shoes from?" And I said, "Oh, I don't remember where. It was, like Famous Footwear or something like that. It's some normal place." He's like, really? How much were they? And I told him, and, oh, well, I'm so relieved to find that out. He goes, I have been looking for that pair of shoes. That's the shoes that I want. I haven't been able to find them anywhere, and I've been praying to God that He would lead me to find these shoes. You know. Now, what do you say to that, right? I mean, is God involved in every? Right? Is that maybe God's trying to help people find shoes that don't have any shoes at all. You know, that might be. But does God want you to have a pair of Nike? Maybe He does. Maybe. But a deist would say, hey, come on. Keep looking for the shoes. Yeah, you have the tools. You've got a phone. You've got a phone book. You've got a online internet. You've got this. You can drive. You got a car. You can drive around. You can find these shoes if they exist somewhere. Yeah, is the Creator, does He involve Himself in helping you find a certain pair of shoes? A deist would say no. In fact, He's not involved. So it's a very contrasting. Well, at least in that way. It's very contrasting with our kind of modern day Christian sense of God being very like interactive with us, being very cued into everything going on in your life and being active in those areas. But deism does solve the intellectual problem of why do these bad things happen? You know, why is there suffering and well, that would be a big one to answer there. This is the question many people are asking Augustine, though, as these Germanic hordes are coming down, tribes are coming down from through Italy, and they're about to cross over to North Africa. You know, how could this be happening to us? You know, how could this happen? And well, he's kind of thinking about the philosophical end of all this. Okay, so, but let me say one more thing. Maybe, though, when it comes to, like, you might be able to think of some things that you feel are evil, murder, terrorism, children born with diseases or addictions, you know, or diseases they shouldn't have to deal with, you know, because their mom and dad were reckless with their behavior of some sort, you know. I don't know. There's things that maybe we can look at and say are evil, but then here they've happened in a world where God's all-powerful, all-knowing, all-good, and maybe we're just kind of arrogant about thinking we are able to label things as something that we somehow leapt over God and said, yeah, well, that's evil, that's wrong. Because it is hard to explain how those things are possible. Okay, so let's talk about the next one, which is epistemology. Anybody know what that deals with? Epistemology. Sounds like a bad word, doesn't it? I'm really epistemology about you. Epistemology? What does that deal with? Knowledge. So, I think I got into this a little bit, didn't I? Yesterday? Okay, so I kind of backed up there. And I'm sorry for your loss, Andrea. I didn't mean to like move on, you know, because I know you haven't moved on yet. All right. Yeah, we talked about, okay, sources for, again, I remember, okay, there we go. So there's two ways that, basically, if you think about it, there's two ways that we learn things. So we're talking about knowledge and how we acquire knowledge about the world or about anything. There's really only, you think there'd be all these, but it really boils down to two different ways. And those two, you guys get all this here? Those two ways are empiricism and rationalism. Empiricism and rationalism. So you probably heard the term, you know, that's an empirical study, or be rational about this. I don't know. That's a bit different use of the word, but empiricism says that in order to really know something, you have to have had a personal sensory experience of that, whatever it is. You have to experience this thing personally with your own senses. So our knowledge, our real knowledge of the world comes through our personal sensory experience of what goes on. So, well, let me give the other one first and I'll give some examples. Rationalism says that it is possible that, I don't know that it discounts empiricism, but it's possible for you to learn things about the world through the use of language. Whether it's written or spoken, however it's conveyed to you, you can learn things through knowledge, through reading, through listening to a lecture, through watching something on television, a reporter reporting on what's going on here. You can learn things that way. And, beyond that, it's kind of hard to think, well, how else is it that we learn anything? Like, how is it that we might acquire knowledge? Either I've experienced it, or I've heard about it, or read about it. So if we try to think of kind of if you lived in a strictly empirical world, that you don't know anything unless you experience it yourself, no one can really tell you anything, can teach you anything verbally. You have to experience it yourself. Like, what would life be like under that kind of thinking? I'll start you off. There might be a lot of people dead by being run over by cars. No? Yes. That's assuming we have people who got as far as how to learn how to drive a car and make a car, right? But a lot of people would say, I'm just going to cross the street right here. And your mom's not going to yell at you. Look both ways. Well, that's useless. I think there'd be a lot of burned hands because people would, maybe their mom would leap out for a minute and say, don't touch the stove, it's hot. But that doesn't, you have to find out, yeah? And the stove was hot, yeah? So you burn your hand. I don't know, something like that. But there would also be like no, it feels like every single person would have to like start from square one, like with what they want to know about the world, and have to kind of build every person who's born has got to start from the beginning and work their way up, and they can't learn anything unless they've experienced it themselves. Very dangerous way, I think also. So, on the other side, if we lived in a world that only learned things through rationalism, through use of language, what are some problems that would happen there? Anybody? Will Rogers, Oklahoma native, he had a quote, he said, all I know is what I read in the papers. So, well, that's okay. That's Will Rogers, that's good. But what would it be like if you only learned things through people telling you somehow, in the paper, in a magazine, on the news, parents, teachers, they're just telling you this stuff. What could go wrong there? What could possibly go wrong with that?
Information might not be true.
Yes. Yes, right? And maybe not intentionally untrue, it's just, they're just wrong. On the other side, it could be intentionally untrue because they have some, I don't know, reason or agenda to tell you otherwise. Okay, that's a good one. Yeah, so in a class like this, a teacher could start lecturing about some guy named John Dublé, right, and spell his name out on the board, a little hyphen, or a little accent mark after the E, right? Jean, spelled J-E-A-N. Talk about all his philosophies, when he was born, when he died, and there's no such person like this, right? Right? But you write the notes down, believe it, you'd regurgitate it later, you'd remember it maybe. For whatever reason, they just didn't know, or they were intentionally lying to you about it. So lying would be a big one, I would say, or just ignorance would be a big one too. So if we're only going to learn things through spoken language, then there's a lot of hurdles there. Now, most of us, and tell me if you don't agree, please feel free to disagree with me. I think most of us live kind of in a, I like to use this word now, a hybrid world of these two things. Like some things, we believe people, I mentioned that the textbook having all these people who sign off on it, that they all, the professors, they all say, oh, this is a good solid textbook. So we believe it. We believe that it's real. I believe this is actually German. It's not Greek or some other language. It's actually that. But So there's some things we, accept there, but there's some things we prefer to see for ourselves or sense for ourselves. So if Brock comes to me and says, hey, I know you're interested in Bigfoot, and he's coming to my backyard every night. Where do you live, by the way? What part of town?
South Tulsa.
Yeah. Maybe in the edge of the woods or something? I don't know. Just suburb? Yeah. All right, so
Deep in the woods.
deep in the big enough woods to hide maybe an 8 to 9 foot tall creature. Would that be okay? Good. So you tell me that, and you keep telling me that, and I keep saying, yeah, Brock, I'd have to see that for myself. I'm not saying you're a liar. I'm just saying I have to see it for myself. Or maybe you could bring me some a stool sample or something, or some hair or some tissue or something. Yeah, he, set up something where he's gonna get his arm cut in a nail, or I don't know, something. Then we'll go from there. But until then, it's just you telling me that, and so some things I want to see. I think I pass to use example. If I send you to see Mrs. Schloss or whoever counselor to, because you seem to be tired in class all the time. It's okay. It's all right. Because this might be your story, really. You're tired in class all the time, and I don't know what's wrong, and I send you, maybe you don't want to tell me, and you go to Miss Schloss and you say, well, the problem is kind of weird. Like I'm being abducted at night by a alien mothership, and I'm working all night on the ship. They make me work all night, and I only get a couple hours of sleep when they return me back to my bed. And so, therefore, I am tired all day, And, well, Mrs. Schloss can either believe you, or she can say, I'm going to come to your house and watch this happen. How you get abducted or something. I don't know. It's like, people tell all kinds of stories. But, so here, I would say that like science would lean more towards the empirical, right? When it comes to proving something, someone's word, and I'm using this as an example. This is not a political statement on my part, but people or even doctors can say that hydrochloroquine works to cure COVID. They can say that, and maybe they've given it to patients, and those patients have recovered. Maybe more empirically minded doctors would say, well, most people do recover anyway from COVID. So the fact that you gave them a certain drug and they recovered is not proof that the drug made them recover. There needs to be more empirical studies about this type of thing. That's why the FDA is fairly, well, hopefully very careful about what they approve when they don't approve for. So these are people over here saying that it's worked. These are their words, right? They may even have, actual cases where here's where it's worked. But, there was one doctor, a pediatrician, who was claiming that, and that was kids. Well, kids even have a higher recovery rate. So, that's a tough claim to make, at least empirically. Rationally, it works. And rationally, people are scared, and I understand people maybe latch onto these things. But empirically, other scientists would say, you've got to prove that. It's got to be proven. It's got to be proven to be safe. It's got to be proven to be effective. That it actually does something. That it's not, just the normal recovery rate that we'd always expect. But, so, one more thing. So, I'm going to, I haven't looked at your chemistry textbooks. I'm just using chemistry as an example. It could be biology too, or AP bio, or whatever. But I'm going to assume that there's some material in that textbook that it just gives to you, that just feeds to you. You have to read it, and you get the learning about it. You learn about it from reading, right? There's must be paragraphs where you read. And then there are experiments too, right? You go into a lab, and is that right? I haven't watched you guys in chemistry yet. Do you do experiments in chemistry? Is there a lab in chemistry?
Yeah.
Okay, so and are the labs based off something in a workbook or the textbook?
Yeah.
Okay. And are any of you doing experiments that have never been done before? Like this is brand new. No one's ever tried this before. No, not at this level, right? Maybe further down the road. Right? Okay. So there is a definite result, right, that they're looking for, that there's if you do everything properly, is that correct? Please tell me, because I haven't been in chemistry in a long time. There's a result they're looking for, right? And so not only is it in the book, but it's also, you prove it to yourself from your own experience of having done that. But some things in the book are kind of fed to you, if I can say it, verbally, or through language. So I think that's kind of where most of us are. Yeah, there's some things we'd have to maybe, I need to see that. And some things we accept. We accept as truth because someone we think is true. Let me tell you one quick story. This is just another Bigfoot story. As it goes along, it's just amazing how much Bigfoot applies to all this. I'm smart. I met a few years ago the guy he's really like the most well-known academic. He's a college professor that deals with this topic of Bigfoot. Okay, so he's actually an anatomy professor and anthropology, and his specialty is in bipedalism, like how we came as humans, as Homo sapiens, to walk upright, to have our hands free, and to walk on 2 feet all the time, whereas other primates haven't developed that way in the way that we have. Okay, so that's his evolutionary, thinking. Well, I was standing in a line to buy his book. Let me show it to you right here. I happen to have it right here. I wasn't planning on this. Here we go. Signed by him. There we go. But before we got to this, though, I noticed that everyone in line in front of me, now he's a scientist, he's an anatomist and anthropologist, everyone in line in front of me is telling him their own personal Bigfoot story. Some of them are quite lengthy. And I didn't catch all of it, but I could tell what was going on. Well, I don't have I don't have a Bigfoot story. Not yet, right? But so part of my retirement plan, though, is to catch them and make a lot of money. If that ever happens, I will not be at school the next Monday. So let me know. If I'm not here, I'm probably at Harvard or something with the corpse. Yeah. But I got up to Dr. Meldrum and I said, I kind of quietly, I didn't want to offend anybody, but I said, Dr. Meldrum, I just want to tell you that I don't have a Bigfoot story to tell you. Oh my gosh, I knocked the camera off. I don't have a Bigfoot story to tell you. You know what he said to me? He said, thank God. Quietly, he said it, right? Thank God, because I think he's about sick. But a scientist wouldn't care about all that, really. I mean, nothing he's never heard before. But those eyewitness accounts or personal accounts don't really affect him in the world that he deals with in the empirical world, unless they have something like a imprint of the footprint, a cast or something, or they've got, again, hair or something like that, then it doesn't impress him at all. I mean, he's nice about it, he'll listen to you, but it doesn't do him much good as a scientist there. Okay. There were, I mentioned about Aristotle. I'm going to say one more thing about him. Aristotle develops what becomes, and it's in a way it's kind of still being developed slowly, but Aristotle develops what is first known as formal logic. Yeah? That you take a couple of assertions and you draw a conclusion about those things. Logic's not without its flaws, even formal logic, but there are things within logic that, and as it's kind of grown as a field, that you can learn things about. Now, this is not necessarily using just rationalism or empiricism. It could be a mixture of both, but you're really then applying then your cognitive ability to. So if you say, kind of famous one, all men are mortal. Yeah? No one lives forever. Socrates is a man. Conclusion, Socrates is mortal. He's going to die someday. You already know that from your book. So that's the kind of, so you can use your mind to think. So I was talking to someone the other day about some crazy, when I say crazy, I mean, I'm not going to even tell you what it was, conspiracy theory that's going floating around. And I said, well, just apply your mind to this now. Just think what you know about human nature, and just from people that other people, just people that you know in your own life, and just kind of like walk this person through 2 or 3 steps, to just think through this, so that all that you've told me here. Now, and when you get to the end, you think, tell me if you think that, if it still sounds as reasonable as it did when you were telling me. And well, he said, yeah, well, maybe not as reasonable, but I still believe it, though. That's the important thing. They still believe it. Okay, so you can kind of get people to apply their mind to the utmost, and hopefully they can use logic formally or informally to kind of make a conclusion. But there's a formula. I actually got out of, I was not very good at math, and I went to my counselor in college. I said, hey, this math is not working out for me. And he said, oh, well, why don't you take logic instead? And that sounded very logical to me. Having not taken the class yet, I already made that sounds great. Logic, yeah, take logic, and it counts as a math credit. So I got into that class. It was not an easy class. It was easier than math, but it was interesting too. But somehow I got a math credit for that. So, all right, let me see here. Logic. All right. Now, axiology. I talked about this, about what is of value. What is of value? This is maybe a very individualistic thing. Some people might say, well, if I won the lottery and I won $100 million, I would still just stay in the house that I'm in now and keep driving the same car. I would go to work the next day too. Some people will say that, and they would maybe really do it. Some people. Some people would say, oh, I would just call in and say, I'm not going to be in forever. And then I would travel the world and buy a Maserati and maybe a Lamborghini for my wife, and we would just live large, off all this money that I got, right? Well, that kind of shows where your value is, where you place your value monetarily, and also maybe where your values are as well, I didn't say this, the big JC said, what I'm talking about, big JC? Bible JC? Good, thank you. Big JC, wherever your treasure is, there also is your heart. Heard that before? So wherever you place your time, effort, money, it shows where your heart is also. And this is the sense of value I'm talking about, where there's monetary value, and then even maybe as a result of how you choose to spend that money, you show in some way where your heart is, where your real desires are then. Some people win the lottery, I guess, and give all the money to charity or something. Or a lot of it, right? Half of it or something. Well, I would say that's admirable. If they're, as long as the charity doesn't belong to them, or the charity isn't a debt collector they've been avoiding for a long time. I don't know, but probably I would imagine most. Have you guys followed these people? By the way, I don't know. I'm on a tangent today about a lot of things. There was a documentary on. It wasn't Netflix. It was a while back, where they followed like the life of at the time of the top 10 lottery winners, like as far as money they won in the United States. Have you ever seen this before? Yeah, it's pretty sad. It's pretty tragic, actually. 9 out of 10, their life is just horrible. Just horrible. Most of them are bankrupt. They spend all that money, sometimes hundreds of millions of dollars. And they've gotten divorced, remarried, divorced, all kinds of that kind of issues. Their kids don't talk to them anymore. Of course, cousins and fourth cousins come out of the woodwork, want to borrow money, and they spend it all on, a lot on themselves, a lot on other people. Their whole life changes, in a bad way very quickly. At first, it was a lot of elation and fun, but after a while, there was one couple out of the 10. They were fairly young, actually. I mean, in their late 20s or so, and they won a couple $100 million in those big lotteries. And before they accepted went in and claimed the money, they went to an attorney they trusted. What should we do? He guided them, got them in touch with the financial person who was ready to receive the check for and then they presented themselves and said, okay, we're the winners. And they got their money, and they had this financial person put them on an allowance or a salary or something where they got a certain amount of money every month. And then they moved from the Los Angeles area inland in California, and they bought a ranch, but out by Bakersfield or something. And then they bought 2 new cars, this ranch, because it came with a home and all that. And that was really their only big purchases they made. And then every month they get a certain amount of money, and they just live within that budget, but their money, and so they had to kind of move to get away from people who might try to borrow money, get money, swindle them out of money. But yeah, pretty bad, right? Yeah. People, they say, there was a psychologist on this, he said, money doesn't give you character. Money just amplifies the character you already have. So if you have a little bit of a drug problem, if that's possible, you're going to have a big drug problem when you get a lot of money. Huh? If you womanize a little bit, you're going to turn into a huge womanizer when you get lots of money, right? Whatever your vice is, it's going to become amplified in most people. Yeah, there's no character that comes from just being given a bunch of money. Maybe you build character out of earning money, but that way it's not. Anyway, all right. So what is a value? Other questions underneath this field of axiology would be, are there any values that are better than other values? Are Christian values better than Buddhist values? Are American values better than European values? Whatever that means exactly. When you say American value, people throw words around like that all the time, but they don't really define what they mean by that. But are there any values that are better than any other values? Can I judge other people's values? Can I, or another culture's values in some way? Can I say that's just wrong? That's just. Say again. Okay, right. So let me give this example, and I really hate to use anything to do with the Nazis because I feel like we go way off the deep end then. But let's just say that you and I could go back in time, and unlucky for us, the place we end up is on the train platform at Auschwitz, right? Where cattle cars are arriving and they're unloading Jews and there's somebody there in a slick Nazi uniform and knee-high black boots saying right, left. I'm translating for you, by the way. Oh, he's saying right, left. And right means you're going to the gas chamber, and left means you're going to go be worked to death, probably. And so could we look at that situation and say, I'd like to learn more about these German people or this whole Nazi ideology, because obviously I don't understand it because it kind of doesn't seem right to me what they're doing. But I'd like to know more about them because I obviously, because I just don't quite get it. Yeah. Would we say that maybe? No, if we were visiting as time travelers. Maybe? Okay. Well, I have a feeling I think we would know it was wrong what they're doing.
Yeah.
Okay. It would be
I thought you meant
No, go ahead. No, I want to give you a chance to redeem yourself. Go ahead. I'm teasing you. Go ahead.
Would like to learn about
well, sure. No, we'd want to know about that too. But I mean, the reason I don't think this is right, I don't want to judge these people. We wouldn't talk like that, right? We'd no, this is, no matter what their thinking is, this is wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah. No matter what background they came from, this is not right. They got grandmothers and kids and old men going off to be gassed, and the
Yeah.
people a little more able-bodied are going to be work. Yeah, it'd be hard to think of any justification for that kind of right. So we would just know. So maybe there are some situations where we would look at someone else's values and say, no, that's not right. And you don't have to explain anything to me, no matter what you tell me. Although I might be interested in knowing, whatever your, yeah, there are people who study this, by the way, about, or not study this, but have studied it about, you know, what makes, you know, people, that person standing on the platform making life and death decisions on the spot there, like what brought them to that point? Like, are they just sociopaths? That could be. Like, they just don't have any conscience at all.
And they were just like waiting for their moment.
And what now?
They were waiting for their moment.
Yeah, and this was, yeah, they get to be like a legal serial murderer, basically, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. Maybe they murdered before this, but it was, you know, they had to keep it quiet. But now they just, it's all sanctioned now. It's all right.
Amplified the person they were.
Right. Oh, there you go. A lot of full circles happen in this class. There we go. I like that. Well, but there's been a lot, you know, written about the psychology, like how through propaganda, through whatever other means, that you get people thinking differently about these people getting off the train, right? In fact, what I've read and know is that they don't think of them as people. In fact, they would call them even in subhuman would be maybe a translation. So they're not human. So if you can convince people that these people over here are not human, the Jews are subhuman, then you can get people to do things they wouldn't have done before. But it just takes time, though. It's difficult because everybody would have known somebody Jewish, you know, and almost everybody in Germany would have known somebody. And so, yeah, it's very interesting. There's a book. Anyway, another senior thesis idea. There's a really good book called Hitler's Willing Executioners, and it's about this topic. Like, how were they so willing to do what they did? Like, without question, you know, they just followed orders and did really horrible things. How did they get to that point? Like, what was done to them? What was fed to them? And he actually goes back pretty far in history, long before Hitler, and traces kind of the patterns of anti-Semitism and thinking and what was kind of in the normal, you know, speech of people, what they said. There were always jokes and all this, and then all of a sudden, when it came to, there was this big problem and the financial system was collapsing and all that, it wasn't a big of a leap to blame it on the Jews. And by the way, they're not even really human, and all of a sudden they're vermin, they're more akin to rats or goats or whatever than they are to humans, and they're collapsing everything, and if we get rid of them, everything will be better. And all of a sudden you got people who are willing executioners then, you know. The author's name is Daniel Goldhagen, Goldhagen. It's a pretty lengthy work, but you could draw a lot from it. You wouldn't have to read the whole thing to understand what he's talking about. Okay, so values. Yeah, well, you know, maybe we can. Maybe some values we can't judge. Well, that's just all they know. That's what they've been taught. That's what they believe. That's part of their faith. Not about the Nazi Germany thing, but other things you might witness, you might notice. If you've traveled abroad, maybe you've seen things done differently. I don't know if they're always value-oriented necessarily, but of course, different customs and all that really aren't necessarily value-oriented things. But maybe you've seen things, different value things go on, and you think, well, that's different than home. Yeah. Are we almost done? What time is it? You guys have some kind of internal clock or something. You guys are really something. Start packing up 30 seconds before the bell rings. Okay, so be sure and look tomorrow for and you can watch live stream, or you can watch the, what do you call it? The playback, delayed simulcast. But it'll be with the B group.